So I'm sitting here in the back of my 1978 Mustang II, contemplating life and questioning, how I got here. It's a question that I get asked a lot by other people. What the heck are you doing with a Mustang II? Why on earth would anybody spend money on a Mustang II? Shouldn't you, or couldn't you, or wouldn't you rather buy a more popular car, maybe a car that might be worth something before you spend a lot of money on it? They're fair questions. And so I figured I'd put together a video sort of addressing, the elephant in the room, which is the Mustang II. Why a Mustang II? Why should you? Why shouldn't you? What do people say about it? What are the common things I hear? And so forth. This question, or this car can definitely cause me to, question a lot of things. I've absolutely taken apart one or two things up inside here. Sorry for the glare. The whole dash is out, the wire harness is out, the AC heater box is out. Everything's out of the inside of the car. Everything's removed from the firewall forward. There's nothing but structure there. There's no wires, there's no hoses, there's no lines, there's nothing. It's just metal. And so if you're going to take a car apart to this level, I guess the question that most people ask is, shouldn't it be a car that's worth something? Well, the bottom line is there is no car, really, that's worth doing this kind of work on it, unless it's something exceedingly rare. If you've got an original GT350 Mustang, if you've got a 68 California Special, if you've got something really unique, sure, you might be able to spend the money that it takes to completely tear down and rebuild a car and maybe get something out of it. But I'll emphasize the maybe. If you want to talk about it in terms of economics, the cost to strip down a car completely, for a shop to take it apart and then strip it, do all the metal work on it, and put it back together, you're talking hundreds of hours, 300, 400, 500 hours or more, plus parts. You're going to be in over $100,000 just on the structure. You could be in for 40, 50, 60,000 bucks just for metal work alone. And of course, the cost to take it apart and put it back together. Now, you can save most of that if you do the work yourself, but you've got to be somebody who's comfortable taking a car apart, putting it on a rotisserie, and spending a lot of time on it. But even then, you're never going to get your money back. No, there's just no way. So let's say this was a 65 Mustang instead of a 78 Mustang. 65 Mustangs, if it's a convertible or the most desirable, which is the fastback, it might be worth 30, 35,000 bucks when it's restored unoriginal. If it's a coupe, you're in the 20s. And that's, a pretty car that you can jump in and drive away. If it needs a lot of work, it's going to be less. But you could spend tens of thousands of dollars just trying to put it back together with basically stock components. But if you want to turn it into a hot rod and you want to upgrade the brakes and you want to upgrade the engine and you want to upgrade the transmission and you want to upgrade the rear end and the electrical system and the interior, and it snowballs, before you know it, you're north of 50,000 bucks just in parts for a car that's worth half of that at best. So if you're thinking about doing something like this as an investment, you should really take your money down to like an investment firm and start learning about stocks and bonds and T-bills and that sort of thing, because that's the only way you'll get money back from your money. Putting it in a car is a losing game unless you're somebody who's rich and can buy a car that already has inherent value and hang on to it and hope that value increases. Something like this is not a money-making game. So if you're in it for the money, you're in it for the wrong reason. So you've got to do it because you want to do it, and you've got to pick a car car that you like. And that's how I ended up with the Mustang II. It's a car that I absolutely love. And a lot of people don't, and that's fair, and that's fine. And if you're one of them, then just don't build one. That's fine. I hate Camaros. I'm not a big fan of Corvettes. There's a lot of cars I don't like. There's a lot of cars I do like. This happens to be the one that I chose. And so to each their own. You can spend a lot of time and energy questioning why people have done what they did, or you can just decide what you want to do and what makes you happy and then do that. So I'm going to address a lot of the things that I hear from people about the Mustang II. And some of it are, most of it will be addressing the negative things that you tend to hear. So the first, and I made some notes because I didn't want to forget. I am in my 50s after all. So the first thing that you hear all the time is that they only made this car because of the oil embargo, the Arab oil embargo in the early 1970s, and that Ford never would have built a car this small if it weren't for the Arab oil embargo. That's not true at all. So gas was already getting more expensive in the early 1970s. People were already looking at economy cars. The Japanese cars were starting to come into the U.S. market. But Ford's answer was not the Mustang II. Ford's answer was the Pinto, 1971. They built a really small car with a four-cylinder engine, very inexpensive, very economical. That was Ford's answer to the oil prices, not the Mustang II. In fact, the Arab oil embargo, the actual embargo started in October 1973. The Mustang II was already in production. It went on sale in September 1973, a month before. The first model year is 74. They sold those in 73, which means they designed it in 72, tooled up and started building it in early 73. So 6 months or so before the oil embargo happened, the thing was already in production. It was already happening. The reason that it's a smaller car than the earlier Mustangs is because the Mustang itself got too big, 70 to 73. The 65, 66 Mustang was actually about the same size as the Mustang II. The 70 through 73 cars got bigger and bigger and bigger. And Lee Iacocca, who was behind the introduction of the original Mustang, 1964 and a half, wanted it to go back to its roots as a smaller car. And so that was the directive. In 1973, stop making this whale and return it back to its roots as a pony car. If you're not familiar with the term pony car, it doesn't have to do with Mustang. It's a general term given to small or mid-size, nimble, sporty cars, typically two-door cars. So a Camaro is a pony car, a Mustang's a pony car, a Charger is a pony car, and so forth. And so the 71, 72, 73, those things are whales. They were way too big to be considered pony cars. And Lee Iacocca wanted the Mustang to go back to being a pony car. So that's what the size change was all about in beginning with 1974 model year. And so they didn't offer a V8 option in 1974. That was a controversial decision. That was the first year that they didn't offer at all a V8 option. They didn't offer one in 74 or 75 in the Mustang II. That was mostly in response to consumer demand. Focus groups and all that sort of stuff. People didn't want V8 cars because gas prices were getting more expensive. The V6 and the four-cylinder cars, consumers thought they were plenty sporty enough. And that's what they wanted, so that's what Ford built. Consumer demand actually did come back and influence Ford to put a V8 in the car, and they did for 76, 77, and 78. And those were moderately popular options. They never sold as many V8 cars as they did 4- and 6-cylinder cars, though. The 4 and 6 were always the most popular of the Mustang IIs. And if you try and find one that's out there now, chances are, if you find an inexpensive one, it's probably a 4- or 6-cylinder car. People are starting to get crazy with their prices on the V8 cars, although I found mine pretty cheap. It was a huge success. They sold, let's see, 390,000 Mustang IIs in 1973 for the 1974 model year. So that's 3 times as many Mustangs as they sold in the 1973 model year. So 1973 model years, the last of the big giant Mustangs, and they weren't selling well at all. When they made the car smaller again and redesigned it, it was all of a sudden hugely popular. 3 times as many. In fact, that year is the 4th overall top-selling Mustang model year of any year in the approaching 60 years of Mustang production now. So the next thing you hear a lot is that it's small. It's a really small car. Gee, why is the car so small? Well, it only looks small if you look at it next to the 70 through 73 Mustang. It's about the same size as the 65 or 66 Mustang. The 73 Mustang got so big as 8 inches longer, 6 inches wider, and 1,100 pounds heavier than a 65 Mustang. That was a massive car. But the Mustang II, it is 4 inches shorter than the 65 Mustang, so it's a little bit shorter. But it's also wider. It's 2 inches wider, has about the same wheelbase, and it's only 200 pounds heavier. So the Mustang II is actually about the same size as the 65 and 66 Mustang. So it's not a small car at all, comparatively. Pinto. You hear a lot that the Mustang II is Pinto-based. It's not. Mustangs, manufacturers, I should say, it's common for manufacturers to share parts cross-platform. That goes on today. Look at modern cars. Look at we'll stick with Ford because we're talking Mustangs. Look at the Fusion, Focus, and Fiesta. Look at the front end of all 3 of those cars and look at the similarity, right? They even share some common parts between those 3 different platforms. They do it cross manufacturers, and so like the Ford 500 is really a Volvo S70 wagon rebodied. So there's a lot of that cross platform sharing of parts that goes on behind the scenes with manufacturers. But honestly, the Pinto doesn't have much in common with the Mustang II. The brakes, a few suspension parts, the engine. And so, as Ford puts it, there's more Falcon in the 65 Mustang and there's more Fairmont in the Fox body Mustang than there is Pinto in the Mustang II. So it's really not true at all that the Mustang II is Pinto-based. They do share a little bit of styling in some parts because they were built by the same manufacturer about the same time, but the Mustang II is definitely not a rebadged Pinto or anything like that. It was slow. I hear this a lot. The Mustang II was not popular because it was a slow car. If you know anything about the 70s, especially once the emissions laws kicked in and they started choking down the engines, everything was slow in the 1970s, in the mid-1970s especially. So if we look at their competitors, so the V8 Mustang only had about 140 horsepower. That's pretty embarrassing for a 302. I'll admit that. But Camaros and Chargers had about the same. They were about 150 to 170 horsepower in that range. The 78 Corvette only had 180 horsepower. And even the Z28, the Camaro Z28 1978, 185 horsepower. It was just pathetic across the board. It had nothing to do with the Mustang II in particular being slow. It's that everything was slow. Manufacturers hadn't figured out how to make cars run and drive normally with all that emissions equipment on it. It was all new. They figured it out. I mean, look at what's happened in the last in the last few years with especially the Chargers and the Hellcat and you're talking 500, 600, 700 horsepower out of production cars on pump gas with emissions on them. That's amazing. They didn't know how to do that in the early 70s. So everything was slow. It's not just that the Mustang II was slow, it's that everything was slow. But here's the most important thing to think about, though, is none of those other cars survived. The Camaro didn't survive the 70s. The Corvette did, but it turned into the Barbie car, so I'm not sure if you can consider that surviving. Nothing against Barbie, that's everything against the car. So the Charger didn't survive, the Challenger didn't survive. They turned them basically into rebadged Mitsubishi four-cylinder cars. But the Mustang did survive, and so the Mustang is approaching 60 years of production continuously because the Mustang II was able to fill that gap and fill it effectively. And so, sure, it was slow. Everything was slow. But the point is that the Mustang II carried on the name and carried on the styling in a lot better way than later cars did. The Fox body Mustang was really, really popular, but that is anything but a pretty car. I mean, if you gave a child a blank piece of paper and some crayons and asked them to draw a car, they'll draw you something that's really like boxy and all straight lines and a few angles. That's a Fox body Mustang. It has no style. It's a box. At least the Mustang II has curves. It's got flares over the wheels. It's got that beautiful scallop down the side. Now, it was hidden in some really questionable design choices in the production cars. The vinyl bumper strip that they put down the side of the car, the wheel well trims, all that stuff, the vinyl top. But if you strip all of that stuff off and get down to the actual metal of the car, it's got some really nice style to it and a nice design. You just got to do a little work to expose it. Let's see. It's really expensive to build a Mustang II, so you shouldn't bother. Part of that is true. There's not a whole lot of aftermarket support, but there are solutions out there if you just put forth a little bit more effort. If you want to build a 65 Mustang, you don't even need a car. You could buy an entire body shell aftermarket nowadays, and you can buy any part you need from any number of catalogs and build a whole car. But where's the challenge in that? With the Mustang II, it's a little bit harder to find parts because people didn't keep them. People didn't restore them. And so it's really challenging to find parts for them, some parts, and challenging to do certain things with them. But you can, and it doesn't have to cost you a whole lot more money than it would for other cars. You just have to be creative in how you find your solutions. You can't just go buy your solutions. Sometimes you have to build them, and that's more effort but less money. So it can be more economical. But speaking of economical, the cost of the car. So you can find a low mileage car running and driving a great condition, $15,000 in that range, between 15 and 20. One that's a survivor car in great condition. If it's not a survivor car, if it's been restored or aftermarket parts, still 12, 15,000, that range. If you want to find one that's unrestored and maybe a little bit beat up, you could find one easily $5,000 to $10,000. That's really affordable. And if you're looking for one to make a true hot rod out of, whether a resto mod or a drag car, a race car, street strip, anything like that, and you don't really care much at all about originality, well, you can find one $2,000, even less. I paid $1,500 for the car that I'm sitting in right now. Didn't have an engine, and that's fine. I didn't need it. Came with the transmission. I didn't want it. Came with the rear end. I'm not using it. So really, I just needed an intact shell that wasn't all rusted out. And it does have some rust on it. That's normal. But it wasn't a rusted out hunk. So it was exactly what I was looking for. But they're inexpensive. You won't find a 69 Camaro or a 67 Mustang for those kind of numbers. No way. Not even a hunk of junk. Even if you want to find a special version of it, 78 was the only year of the King Cobra, and a lot of people love that car. I kind of think that the snake and the decal on the hood are just about one of the ugliest things I've ever seen on a car. Not a popular thing for a Mustang II guy to say, but those cars were enormously popular, and even one of those in excellent condition, I'm talking show condition, you're still only in the $35,000 range. So really affordable. Now, this one is one that I hear all the time, and that's that everybody hates a Mustang II, right? Isn't it the most hated Mustang ever? We'll go online and start looking up Mustang II, and it'll take you, about 3 microseconds to come up with, most hated Mustang ever, and so forth. More often than not, I have to tell people what it is. When they see it, they don't know what it is. What kind of car is that? It's a Mustang? What year Mustang is? Oh, that's a cool looking car. I don't think I've ever seen one of those before. People don't know what it is. I did have one guy, he was talking to me and the car was in the driveway. I just washed it off. So it was not long after I got it. So it was all together. And when I washed it, it looked really nice. It was a good looking car. So the guy stopped and we're having a conversation, and he's talking about cars from the 60s and cars that he likes, and he's like, I hate those Mustang IIs though. Those were the ugliest things ever. Everybody hates those cars, and starts going off about his hatred of Mustang IIs, and then asked me what year mine was. He didn't know it was a Mustang II. He didn't even know what one looked like. All he knew is that people had told him you're supposed to hate them. And I come across that a lot nowadays. Less so in the 80s and the 90s when a lot of people still knew what they were. But nowadays, most people don't even know what it is. They just have heard that you're supposed to hate Mustang IIs, and that's kind of ridiculous. They were hugely popular at the time. They had really high sales numbers. I'll show you that in a minute. But that's the most important thing, right? Not how popular a car. You can't really look at today's consumer and say, gee, how much would they like a 1908 Model T? Nobody's going to think that's practical nowadays, but in 1908, that was like buying a space shuttle or something. It would change your whole world. So you kind of have to look at what people thought at the time. And at the time, the Mustang II was enormously popular. There's a lot of people that have kind of fond memories of them. If you go to a car show and a Mustang II shows up, look at the people around it. They'll walk down the ubiquitous, endless sea of Fox body Mustangs and early 60s Mustangs, all looking very much exactly the same, in order to get to the Mustang II and take a look at it, because they just hadn't seen one. And when was the last time you saw one in person? There aren't that many out there anymore. It's a unique car. It's getting to be a very unique car. There just aren't a lot of them out there. So how popular were they? Well, I mentioned that they were 4th overall on the sales list for if you look at the annual sales, how many Mustangs they sold each year from 1964 and a half model year through this year. The top selling year ever, 66. 1966, they sold 607,000 Mustangs. Man, that's a big number. 1965 was a little less, 559,000 Mustangs. 1967, 472,000 Mustangs. So 65, 66, and 67, by far the most popular years of the Mustang ever. But number 4 on that list is the Mustang II, 1974, 386,000. And 1979 is number 5 in the list. So the first year of the Fox body Mustang, 370,000. So a little bit less than the Mustang II in its launch year, but still pretty good numbers. But where does the Mustang II stack up overall across all 7 generations now of the Mustang II? Because 2024 marks the introduction of the the 7th generation of the Mustang. So the Fox body Mustang, huge sales numbers compared to the Mustang II. Way more Fox body Mustangs sold than the Mustang II. But you have to look at the fact that the Mustang II only sold for 5 model years, 74 through 78. The Fox body Mustang sold for 15 years, 1979 through 1994, I think. And if you only look at the first 5 years of sales numbers, the Mustang II outsold the Fox body Mustang by more than 100,000 cars. The only reason the Fox body sold more than the Mustang II is because they kept selling them, and they sold them for 10 years more than the Mustang II. Same thing for the SN95s, the 4th generation Mustangs. They sold those things for 11 years. But if you look at only the first 3 years that they were sold, or the first 5 years that they were sold, the Mustang II outsold the SN95 by 456,000 cars. So over 5 years of Mustang II production versus first 5 years of SN95s, Mustang II sold almost 500,000 more cars than the SN95. And then if you look at the 5th and 6th and 7th generation Mustangs respectively, the Mustang II, over the 5-year period, outsold the 5th generation by 100,000 cars, outsold the 6th generation by 500,000 cars, and the 7th generation Mustangs so far, they've only sold about 15,000 of them in 2024 so far. And the first year of the Mustang II is 390,000. So if you even look at the lowest year of Mustang II production, which is, I think, 77, the 2024 Mustang won't even approach the worst year of Mustang II sales. So the Mustang II sold in big numbers comparatively over the generations of Mustangs. The ones that sold more only sold more because they sold them for a substantial higher period of time. If they had continued to sell the Mustang II, they would have sold even more. So it was not an unpopular car. As a matter of fact, if you want to look at unpopular cars, look at any model year after 2007, I think it is. Yeah, after 2007. There's only 2 years after 2007 that Ford even broke 100,000 in sales. 2015, they sold 120, and then 2016, they sold 105. And I'll tell you, the 2015, it's a good-looking Mustang. I can see why the numbers are up there a bit, but again, the worst model year of the Mustang II was 153,000. I mean, most model years after 2007 are 60, 70,000 in numbers, half what the worst year of the Mustang II sold. And so you can't say the Mustang II wasn't a popular car. It really fit the need of the time and was really popular with the people that were buying it. And if you want to talk about the most unpopular Mustang, it's got to be the Mach-E. In 5 years of production of the Mach-E, they've sold about 117,000 cars. Over 5 years, there's still about 35,000 or so less than the worst single year of Mustang II sales. That thing is a bomb. Literally, if the lithium-ion batteries go on that thing. I saw a meme that really made me laugh recently as a Mustang II guy. The meme at the top of it said, most hated Mustang ever. And it was a picture of a Mustang II, but next to it was a Mach-E, and the caption under the Mach-E said, "Hold my beer." So I think maybe the torch has finally passed on the Mustang II. So the final thing that I'll talk about is circling back to the fact that it's a wasted investment to put money into a Mustang II. If the car makes you happy, if the project that you're working on makes you happy, then it's not a waste of money. It's doing what you want And if doing what you want makes you happy, then that's the best car for you, and that's the best project for you. And who cares what anybody else thinks? You'll never get your money back out of a hot rod. The real question is, do you enjoy what you're doing with it? And are you proud of what you do? Are you challenged by what you do? I'll tell you what, from a mechanical standpoint, any joker with the Fisher-Price toy set can take a LS and put it in a Camaro and make it run. Nobody is impressed with that. You'd be hard-pressed to not make it run. It's that easy. It's literally plug and play. Try putting a motor that doesn't fit in a car like a Mustang II. That is a real mechanical challenge. And there are plenty of people out there doing that with more popular cars, doing some creative things with Camaros, with other year Mustangs, with all sorts of different cars, and being really innovative and creative in how they do it. But that's just the point. Find something unique to do. Don't do what everybody else does. There's no fun in that. Challenge yourself, and don't let anybody tell you what to do. So if you want to take a 1978 Mustang II and put a 64 5-bolt 289 in it, stroke it to 347 with a 5-speed transmission, digital fuel injection, Hydro Boost brakes, air conditioning, an 8-inch LCD touchscreen so you can still have your Google Maps. Do it. Do what makes you happy, and don't worry about what other people think. The Mustang II is a great car for its time. It's a great value now if you want to build one. And if you don't, then don't. But don't knock on people who do. Don't knock it unless you try it. And I've never met anybody that owned a Mustang II and worked on a Mustang II that doesn't have fond memories about it. So I'm in here contemplating life in my shell of a money pit. And I got to say, I'm really happy with where I am. And I'm really excited to do what I'm doing with this car. And I can't wait until the day that I get to go do some smoky burnouts with it and get myself in trouble. So, thanks for watching. Take care.